All right. My name is Chris Campbell. I'm a practicing CPA and I work with small to mid-sized businesses and individuals to help them pay the least amount of taxes possible while keeping them out of jail. So today is about penalty relief. So if you owe some back taxes from prior years, there's a chance that there are penalties and interests that you've either paid already and or are part of your bill and get them stripped off. So this was recently brought to my attention and I had to look a little bit more into it. So I did a little bit of research and I figured I'd share it. Two of my clients had seen things online and they had reached out. And it was like, well, is this true? And if so, how can I take advantage of it? So what triggered this was that there has been a recent ruling where I don't know if it's the Supreme Court. I don't know which court it was, but nonetheless, there has been a ruling that penalties can't be assessed on taxes between January 2020 to June of 2020. Now, this was as a result of COVID relief. So normally the IRS charges you penalties for either filing late and or not paying on time. So paying late, filing late, they normally charge you for that, right? Penalties and interest for that. But when the pandemic hit, the IRS had ruled that they gave relief. So they said, okay, during this time frame, I believe it's January 2020 through June of 2023, that they weren't going to charge interest and penalties. Now, the caveat here and where folks have gone to court where there's a big ruling is that back taxes or taxes from prior years that might have accumulated interest and penalties for back taxes during that year. So for example, let's say that heading into the pandemic, you had tax balances from 2018 and 2019, right? Pandemic hits, you still had open balances. And let's say that you filed, but you haven't paid yet, right? So during that time, interest is accruing, penalties are accruing for not paying. So when the IRS issued their ruling, as far as not charging interest and penalties during that time frame, I believe that their intent was not to charge the interest and penalties for those tax years during the pandemic. So specifically 2019, right? Because you're filing 2019 during 2020. So let's say, 2019, 2020, 2021, right? And even 2022, because then you're filing that during 2023. And the IRS has done a pretty good job with holding up their end of the deal with that. But what has come into question in prior years? So I even said 2018, 2019. So let's even go further. So 2016, 2017, I don't think the IRS had that intention of giving penalty relief on prior years prior to the pandemic, right? But if you still carried a balance into the pandemic, IRS didn't want to give you a free pass on that. However, that was challenged and the court has ruled that penalties and interest for any year during that time frame would be subject to relief. So with that said, everybody has made claims or everybody is now rushing to see if they do have penalties and interest during that time frame to see if you can get them wiped out. So the ruling allows that if you did have interest and penalties accruing during that time, and it doesn't matter the tax year, right? So it can be 2020, it can be 2015, it can be 2014, it could be 2030, it could be whatever year that you have, as long as the interest and penalties were accrued during that time frame, 2020 to 2023, you're free and clear. The ruling allows that you shouldn't be charged interest and penalties for that. Now, if you did, a couple of steps that you'll have to take to find out. First step is to find out if they did have interest and penalties accrued. Because I will say, I looked at a few clients' transcripts and the IRS has done a pretty good job of already preemptively refunding or either refunding or just knocking off the balance of interest and penalties accrued during that time frame. Predominantly, like I said, I've seen from the transcripts I've looked at 2019 through 2022. So they've done a pretty good job with already accounting for that. but you'll want to check your transcripts anyway. So step one is to see if you do have some sort of release, where if you've already paid it or if you already have interest. So first step is to take a look at your transcripts. So start with 2019 through 20. Take a look at those transcripts and see if you've been charged interest and or penalties, late filing fees or late payment fees. And even if you already paid it, because if you already paid it and you still charge you for it, you can get the refund for it. If you haven't paid it and let's say you still have a balance, you can make a petition to get that knocked off, and that'll reduce what you owe. So first step is to take a look at your transcripts and see if you've been charged. Like I said, the IRS has been pretty good with preemptively already knocking those things off, but pay attention more so to older years where that might not have happened. So dig into your transcript. How do you do that? Everybody has an individual account. And so you can log in, go to the irs.gov website. I guess what I'll try to do is see if I can leave a link to that where you can either log into your account or create an account if you don't already have one. So go create your IRS online account. And then from there, once you get the account, you log in, you can access your transcripts. I think we'll go to about 8 years. Go in there and it'll give you a line by line. I believe it's called the account transcripts, and they have it listed by year. So it'll give you a line by line account. So you can easily see, it'll label them. You'll see, okay, here's what you were charged. Here's the interest for late payment. Here's penalties for late payment. And you'll see it by the dates. So it's very easy to identify. So you'll want to see if you have penalties between those dates, January 2020 through June of 2023. All right. So if you do have that and it wasn't subtracted, because what I've seen on some transcripts is that they'll add the penalty. And then if you scroll down, you'll see it later on in the transcript that the penalty and or interest have been removed. So look through the whole account if it's been added. And if it's been added, make sure that it's been subtracted. Now, if it hasn't been subtracted, then you got a shot, right? Then that means that you've either already paid for it, if the balance is already paid, or you can petition to have it knocked off or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Now, how do we go about doing that? There's a form that you need to file. It's called the Form 843. And that is a request for abatement of penalties. I don't want to get too far into actually how to fill that part out, but that's the form. The instructions are usually pretty straightforward with that, but it is a Form 843 that you need to fill out. And that's the request that you need to put in. It's essentially asking the IRS to give an abatement or give a relief of the penalty. So you fill that out, you identify the years, you identify the amounts, which you could pull from the transcripts, and then you send it in. And then they'll take a look. And if it's valid, they will either A, refund you the money, or B, reduce your balance if you still have a balance for that year. So that's how you go about doing it. However, there is a deadline for this because my understanding is that the IRS is challenging this. So again, they're not challenging the current years that fall within there. So anything within, like I said, probably like 2 through like 2022. I don't think they're really challenging that. They're challenging years prior, before that, if you had like super old tax debts. So that's what's being challenged. So if it does happen to get overturned, you want to make sure that you get this in by the deadline, which is July 10th of this year. So July 10th, 2026. So make sure you get that in by then. And yeah, if it's valid, you'll have an account adjustment. So hopefully that helped. Make sure you take heed to the deadline. It will permanently go away by July 10th. So make sure to act quickly on that. All right. So that's all for now. If you need any help or assistance with this, please feel free to reach out to myself and my team, and we'd be happy to help. All right. Hopefully it's helpful, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Take care.